The astrological chart is a snapshot in time. It is from our perspective on Earth. We are at the center of the wheel. Standing on Earth, if you look east and west, that is the horizontal line. These are called the ascendant and descendant. If you look up and down, that is the vertical line. These are called the imum coeli and the medium coeli, the latter also being called the midheaven. The easternmost horizon line, where the sun and planets rise, is also known as the rising sign. The first and most fundamental part of the chart is the zodiac signs. These are the 12 constellations that fall along the ecliptic. This is the path the sun and planets move on from our perspective. On the chart, the signs are usually located along the outer edge and will be marked with their symbols. This picture shows 4 planets along the ecliptic, with the constellations behind them. It was taken close to the equator, so the ecliptic appears almost perpendicular to the Earth. The signs are grouped together based on fundamental qualities some share with each other. These are called Quadruplicities and Triplicities. They are expressed by 3 modalities and 4 elements. The Quadruplicities are 3 groups of 4 signs and are called cardinal, fixed, and mutable. Cardinal is about action and assertiveness. They are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. Fixed is about consistency and stability and concentrating energy. They are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. And mutable is about adaptability, flexibility, and change. They are Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. The Triplicities are represented by the traditional elements: fire, earth, air, and water, 4 groups of 3 signs. Air represents thinking and communication, ideas, language, and relationships. Earth represents the material world and the 5 senses, a refinement of it and its limitations. Fire represents energy and inspiration, the spiritual side of our nature, and enjoyment in life. Water signs represent our emotions, our responsive nature, fertility, and other states of consciousness, including the subconscious, dreams, and astral realm. The fire signs are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Earth signs are Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. The air signs are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And the water signs are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. Very briefly, the zodiac signs can be described as Aries. It represents the first impulse of life into existence, the Big Bang, or let there be light, the birth of the personality. Taurus represents the solidifying of life in the material world. It represents values and resources. Gemini represents the splitting of life into dualities, good and evil, etc., and the rational mind. Cancer represents the broadening of life into subjective experiences and feelings, and the nurturing of the personality born in Aries. Leo represents the impulse of creativity, individuality, courage, strength, and the qualities of the metaphorical heart. Virgo represents the refinement of life to perfect it, analyzing, digesting, finding what is useful. Libra represents relationships and the other, adaptation and refinement of the personality from being focused on the self to a focus on others. Scorpio represents the necessity of death as well as regeneration, the lowest depths and the highest heights of our emotion. Also, sex and the power that comes from it. Sagittarius represents the greatest truths, complete knowledge, inspiration, and faith in life, the intuitive mind. Capricorn represents mastery of the material world and the perfection of the personality, and the work and sacrifice it takes to get there. Aquarius represents the impulse to progress and improve what exists, to create a world and culture with the most possibilities, and to create a world that allows for the most individual expression. Pisces represents the desire for all life to become one with the divine, to return to the source, and the realms of the mind outside of rationality or regular consciousness. The zodiac signs represent the fundamental archetypes that make up the base layer of all human experience. They are the ideal form of the sign, so they represent the ideal form of human psychology and behavior. How the zodiac signs express themselves is dependent on multiple factors. Probably the biggest one is the planets that are in a given sign. Another big factor is simply human free will and choice. This is why people with similar signs behave differently. They both behave within the archetype of the sign, but express it differently. The planets are inside the zodiac ring and are shown on the chart by different symbols or glyphs. This includes the sun, moon, and other objects in the sky. Planets, planetary bodies, or celestial bodies are all terms in astrology for anything in the sky that we use. The planets represent different parts of our personality and psychology. They represent certain functions and processes in us and the expression of them through our thoughts, words, feelings, and actions. The signs filter and alter how the planets in our psyche behave. It is a layer built upon another. The signs alone have certain qualities, and the planets alone have certain qualities, and when a planet is in a sign, they affect and flavor each other. The main planets represent the important aspects of our personality and psychology, the parts we use often and that affect us regularly. These matter the most and should be understood thoroughly. I will go in depth into the planets in another video, but here's a quick rundown. The sun represents our main self, the core of our being, our spirit, our will to be, our drive for significance, our leadership capabilities. We usually grow into our sun as we grow and have experiences, or simply put, our sun shines brighter as we grow. People don't always fully identify with their sun sign. The planet people most initially identify with is the moon. The moon is our instinctual nature, the parts of us that have to do with survival, emotional comfort, and subconscious patterns. The moon also represents our feeling nature, how we nurture others, and how we want to be nurtured. It is the internal mother. When we react emotionally to something without thinking, this is our moon speaking. Mercury represents the rational mind, the intellect, and the part of you that is listening to this right now. The sign Mercury is in will affect how your mind processes information. It represents how we communicate, think, and make sense of the world around us. One of humanity's big flaws is assuming others think like we do. But with Mercury in 12 possible signs, we see 12 different versions of rationality and ways of thinking. When you want to communicate with someone effectively, speak to their Mercury. Venus represents how we love and show affection, as well as receive it. It is how we value people and what we value in our resources. Beauty, art, music, it is the internal feminine, the anima. Mars represents our animal nature, the animal mind, our dynamic energy. It is how we fight or run and represents our drive. It is the internal masculine, the animus. Jupiter represents the higher mind or superconscious mind. It represents where we grow, the internal teacher, our optimism, generosity, and inspirations. It is the part of us that looks at the bright side of life, the part that sees the silver lining, the part that is positive. Saturn represents limitations inside us and out, the reality regardless of what we think or feel, the voice of responsibility and reason we have. Saturn is the part of us that challenges us to improve, to accept reality for how it is through pain. It puts our problems and weaknesses right in front of us and shows us how we are responsible for them. It is the internal father. It protects us through rules, barriers, and structures, but also limits us in the same way. Uranus represents our need for freedom, to have no limits. It is the contrast to the Saturn part of us. It is progress, for good or bad, sudden change, flashes of insight. It is how we want to be weird. It connects us to a similar age group generation that wants to be considered unique in similar ways and to challenge the status quo in similar ways. Neptune represents the part of us that has to do with other states of consciousness, dreams, meditation, and drugs, our spiritual needs. The part of us that wants to escape the drudgery of everyday reality. It represents how we lie to ourselves and others, visions, fantasy, and imagination. It connects us to a similar age group generation that idealizes similar things and that is disillusioned by similar things. Pluto represents the latent power we all have inside of us. Power comes in many forms and is expressed in many ways, some very good and some very evil. It is the deepest parts of the unconscious mind, our deepest fears, our pains, our demons, the things we lock up and don't look at. Power with Pluto comes from diving into the depths of the unconscious and fighting those demons, so to speak, and understanding them and conquering them. It connects us to a similar age group generation that feels deeply about certain things, as if they are a matter of life or death. As a generation, they bring to the forefront of culture what they value the most, as well as their pains. This is to help transform it. The other minor planets, asteroids, and others matter too, but they are smaller, more specific parts of our psyche, so they affect us accordingly. Learn the main planets first, before jumping into all the obscure asteroids. The chart can get crowded pretty quickly once many asteroids and other points are added. It's important to remember that the planets, or signs, do not control us or have any literal power over us. They merely represent parts of ourselves and our world. It is useful to look at astrology this way. Saturn, for example, is not doing anything to you. Saturn is just a mirror to the processes happening in us. The houses represent areas of life where the signs and planets express themselves. Any area of life. Work, family, school, the bank down the road, people who dislike us, people who love us, our partners, resources, friends, our pets, our house, the league you're in, the painting you drew, and so on. These all fall into different houses. What falls into each house depends on your specific life. If you don't go to school, but learn things on your own, it's the same house, same area of life. In progressing order, the houses represent stages of growth and the corresponding people, places that come along with it. With the first 6 houses being about personal development and the latter 6 being about social and cultural development. Each house is associated with one of the zodiac signs. They are not the same as each other, but share qualities and are related. I'll elaborate more on that in another video. The houses may vary depending on the house system used, and this comes down to personal preference and experience. The, quote, default house system that is used by many is Placidus. Roughly 44% use it. Most astrology sites and programs have it as the default. It can get complicated how and why there are different house systems. I recommend picking a house system and sticking with it, and I would recommend starting with Placidus. When you get into astrology and want to study more, start with the cookbooks. These are the books that usually look like this. These break down and give a brief description of the planets in each of the signs, the planets in each of the houses, aspects, and other parts of the chart. These cookbooks can be found online and at the library or bookstores. The books and online have similar descriptions about the signs, planets, and houses. Find the commonalities between them. These commonalities are the archetypes. Some websites give you a brief description of your planet, sign, and house combos, as well as a chart to look at. I recommend these as one of the sources. Astro.com is a great one. When you look at an astrology chart, start with the signs, planets, and houses. So in our case, we have the sun in the sign of Taurus in the 8th house. Break these all down using the books and online sources. Then you can go on to other parts of the chart. Break down and read about each planet in your chart, in what sign, in what house, etc. Astrology and the astrological chart are an attempt at categorizing and understanding human psychology, personality, our behavior, our growth, and the world around us. Similar to the Myers-Briggs or Big 5 personality traits. But these rely on the individual's self-awareness, as well as another person to assess you. Astrology can provide an objective means of looking at the self. By that, I mean, one cannot change where the planets are in their birth chart. You just have to work with them. Something I find interesting is just using the sign planet house combos and only using the main planets. There are 1,440 possible combinations of personalities and psychological makeups. In part 2, I will go deeper into explaining the chart. I'll talk about aspects, transits, rulership, and much more. Thanks and take care.